so
hearing those
good.
stats, I actually felt really sad.
I know. I was nearly gonna cry when you were reading. I was like,
just
this is.
huh?
I was just literally. I couldn't even
2070.
contain myself. I was like, this is
2070.
terrible. Terrible.
150 gap of
No, it shall not be the case.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Limits podcast. We are all about discussing education and its intersection with society. We hope you guys have enjoyed our recent content, have been engaging with our questions, with our conversations, and we hope you have learned. We hope you've taken some things away, and that this is, really beneficial for you as teachers, as students, as educators, and as professionals. Today, we have a special lesson focus. As educators, we think it is essential, and as those who are passionate about young people, we feel it's only appropriate to contribute to these discussions going on. And today's lesson focus is the infamous government-led attainment algorithm.
My God.
My goodness. My goodness, the reactions on the table. So to facilitate this discussion, we have invited a very special guest speaker, an innovator,
Listen.
a change agent,
Listen.
a drama teacher.
Come on.
She's done it all. She's done it all.
No way you forgot. 3 degrees on the 25.
3 degrees on the 25. 3 degrees on the Like, we are humbled. We are humbled to have the amazing Mrs. Danielle Babatunde with us.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on to our podcast. This is going to be quite an interesting, and I really foresee a lot of kind of intensity in this conversation. We are talking about the algorithm. We know in the recent weeks, there has been a lot of conversation about the A-Level algorithm that government have used, and the various issues it has posed, the various issues it has introduced. So what we are really going to do today is really delve into that. We're going to really look at what is actually going on, what is the attainment gap, what is education disparity, what are the effects of what has happened, and how do we respond to this, how do the government, how do we as educators and as teachers respond to what has gone on, and just really explore this area. So before we really move forward, I just want to give a brief introduction, a brief chance to Danielle to introduce herself, say a few words.
Yeah, so firstly, guys, thanks so much for having me here. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it, and I love what you are all doing. So as Zion has already said, my name is Danielle Babatunde. I'm a teacher, so I teach in a secondary school. I teach sociology and citizenship. And I'm also a public speaker, so I love empowering young people. That's why I went into the profession. And so any kind of way to use my voice as a tool to empower, inspire, and provoke action with people is what I'm about. And I'm also a content creator, so I love producing content. And so, yeah, that is me.
So just to get some people to know you a bit more, on a personal level, I actually worked with Danielle under her brand Transcend a few years ago. That was a drama production social enterprise organization. And as Johnoi rightly said, 3 degrees under 25. Could you tell us a bit more about your background? So what took you into kind of drama, and what are those kind of degrees that you've got so far?
Yeah, so I would say all of this pretty much started as an A-level student. I remember being in sociology and my teacher saying that, if you're from a working class background, you're less likely to achieve. If you're from a Black African Caribbean background, you're more likely to be excluded, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember being 16 and looking around and being like, no, something needs to be done. Like, this is horrendous. Like, something needs to be done. And that's what kind of stirred up my passion for sociology. That's what stirred up my passion for young people. So I went to uni, studied politics and sociology at Manchester Uni. Still didn't really know what to do, but I knew I wanted to make a difference. And then got exposed to my master's, which was policy studies and education at UCL, because it's all about really, if I want to make change within the local level, I need to also think nationally and
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
100%.
politically policies affect education. So I went on to do my master's, did not have any plans to go into teaching whatsoever. I cannot lie, I really just did not rate the profession at all whatsoever. But I would say for me, it was definitely a God thing. Like it was very clear that everything was steering towards teaching. I thought it was steering towards more empowering young people, but he was like, no, teaching, and through that you will. And I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up doing my PGCE, and so now I'm qualified, which I thank God, but I'm about to embark on my NQT. Woo! So that's how I come along with this academic journey. It wasn't something that I foresaw, wasn't something that I would say when I was young, I've always been naturally smart. I wasn't, but it's something that I had the passion, I had the will, and I, always want to use that as part of my story to empower young people, that you don't have to be the A-star student, and you can still make a difference. Because people will be listening and thinking 3 degrees, oh, you're one of them. And it's like, no, I'm really not. My GCSE grades, banter. But yeah, we thank God through it all, so yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just to kind of kick off the conversation, again, we're going to be speaking about the algorithm and, to really understand what has taken place. What we need to understand before that is the attainment gap. Because a lot of what has gone on, that is where the effects are going to be felt the most with those students. So just to kind of go around the table, in your kind of own words or experience, what is the attainment gap?
So essentially the attainment gap is attainment is how they measure a child's development and a child's progress within learning. So the gap is looking at different demographics and different groups of people and seeing where the gaps are. So who is, I guess, at the top, who is at the bottom, who's in the middle, and what we are trying to do as educators is try and close those gaps between the demographics so that the attainment is the same across the board. So
And what, just off the top of your heads, what do you guys know about the attainment gap so far? There's been a lot of talk whilst in university as educators. What have you heard around the attainment gap?
I mean, so when it comes to filling out data, a lot of the attainment gap data, it actually stretches back into primary school. So they're carried on from key stage, their reading and mathematical attainment following through, and some schools, they use that to actually set students into particular sets and so on and so forth. I think it's even stretched to the fact that by the time you get to your GCSE, if you had a particular attainment score, they can likely predict what you're going to get already in year 7. But again, I think one thing I've kind of realized is that this is outside of factors that can take place in society. So factors like, a single parent household. And so a lot can happen at the start of year 7 until the end of year 11. And so I don't think necessarily the attainment score is something that is accurate. I think it's very much predictive, and it's very much a something that they would like to take place. So it's like we all wish for certain things, but I think it doesn't take into account the whole picture of the development of a child.
Just to bring a definition, so looking at the Department of Education, the attainment gap is defined as a measure of a child's achievement in school, which compares every child to a standardized expectation for the age level, regardless of individual starting points. The attainment is used, so how is it used? It's used in schools to pinpoint what level a child should be achieving at their age. It is used through assessments by teachers, which is normally through examinations, and it is again used to classify and segregate students into various ranks of intellect, grading, and schools. Just some key points we're going to just throw out there before we can move forward about the UK. The UK is actually one of the most socially segregated school systems in the world, where children are admitted to a school based on their basis of ability. So look at ability banding. When I was in school, we had actually fast track, upper band, middle band, and I can't remember the last ones, which were students who were more kind of vocational subjects they kind of put them in. So as definitely, I believe we've all probably seen that in effect. The OECD, so the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, believes that this has a negative impact on social equality and a young person's ability to earn a good income in the future. So essentially, the level of attainment is quite has a strong relational correlation to how successful that student can be and once they finish school. So segregated schools present children with two different perspectives of the world and would affect their life chances. So again, just saying, if you are potentially in the upper bands of education, you may have a better life chance, and those at the lower begin to adopt maybe a lesser mentality towards success. And lastly, there is a strong link between the pupil's socio-economic status and how well they do in school. Pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds have a higher chance of failing. Children and young people living in the most deprived communities do significantly worse at all levels of the education system than those from more affluent backgrounds. And this is often referred to as the attainment gap. And just, I've got a quote here from David Law, so the executive chairman from the Education Policy Institute, which really kind of frightened me. So it was a report looking into attainment in the UK. And I'm just going to read a portion of it. It says, without a marked improvement in the rates at which gaps are being closed, it will take us until almost 2070 before disadvantaged children did not fall behind other students during their time in education.
Wow. Sorry?
What? Yeah. 2070.
Oh, we're 2020.
What?
50 years from now.
50
years from now.
Oh my goodness.
So let me just really buttress that again. It says in 2016, the gap nationally at the end of secondary school was still 19.3 months. So what they will do is they will look at the attainment of various students by ethnicity, etc. Then they would group them into averages. Then what they would now do is now based on those averages for maybe a black student, an Asian, a Chinese, Indian, white, mixed, etc. They would have the averages and then look at the difference between their point scores. And then that would now be correlated into months. So example, whoever is at the top and whoever's at the bottom, there's now months of learning. That's a disparity.
That's needed, yeah.
So what this now says, the gap nationally at the end of secondary school was 19.3 months. So from those who were highest in attainment and those who were lowest, there was a gap of 19 months of education missing. Okay. In fact, disadvantaged pupils fall behind the more affluent peers by around 2 months each year. So not just there's a 19-month difference, but as every year progresses, that is increased by 2 months. Over the same period, so this was from 2007 to 2016, the gap by the end of primary school was narrowed by 2.8 months, and the age by the age of 5 was narrowed by 1.2 months. At current trends, we estimate that it will take around 50 years for the disadvantage gap to close completely by the time pupils take their GCSEs. What are your thoughts? There's a lot of facts and figures there.
It's just absolutely horrendous, if I'm being honest. I think it just feels like a setup, you know. It feels like this is literally why I came into this entire industry, because I'm just so confused that you can see a child and because of their cultural background, because of their social background, you predetermine them to not do well. And, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy is real. There is like research how they told a set 1 class that you are a bottom class, and they told a bottom class that you are top class, and the top class did worse than the bottom class. Wow. Which shows the effect of predictions and expectation, because that will almost predetermine how that child responds to you. So for that child, I guys, I'm sure you know the bottom sets in your class, in your subjects, they already are like, I'm failing. Yeah. You know, oh, miss, what's the point? Yeah. I'm in set 7. I'm not going to make it. But then set 1s, they think they're amazing. And really, frankly, what's the difference? It's your mindset towards it. 100%. And it shows that the whole setting, the whole system of just labeling, the system of strategizing and separating, and setting and banding is just literally to enable the people that are privileged, enable them to get to where they need to get to, whilst in the dispense of the other.
It's highly selective, and it's almost it's an elitist attitude in terms of education. So it's those that we want, just like you said, Danielle, those that we want to do well, you're going to do well because we have fashioned it that way. We have shaped it so that you can do well. Those who are now at the bottom, you know, the bottom of the pecking order, you're going to have to work 10 times harder, not to do better, just to catch up. And
That's
I
it.
look at that and I just think, what are we doing? Like, what are we actually doing? And I think, you know, similar reason to Danielle, it's a reason why I went to, you know, I did not meet and study and academics. I can't. But I went to go and do a master's in education because I really wanted to see, okay, what is actually happening so that I know how I can change it. Like the little ways that I can. One, as, you know, head of PE, you know, like, what are the small ways that I can do something about this? Because it's remarkable. 19 months. You're telling me that's 2 years. You're telling me there's a gap of almost 2 years of learning in order for someone from a disadvantaged background to catch up. We're not, like I said, we're not talking about them doing better. It's just for them to catch up, just for them to meet what, you know, the top at the top are doing. And I just think, no, something it needs to change. We're not talking about this. This can't just be a want or a desire anymore. It has to be done. Like, this is a must, because that is alarming. Like, I'm just sitting here and I'm just thinking, so already in my head, I'm thinking, this one here who has been bottom set since year 7. So if I think GCSE students, 15, 16, you've been bottom set since year 7. In that time span, that 5 years, you still may not reach the grade that it is that top set have been since. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, honestly, like, what are we actually doing?
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting, so again, some of you listeners might be, you know, thinking, okay, so what is the significance of this? It is that a lot of these people who may be in the lower banding are students who may be classed as disadvantaged. So actually, the Guardian done report 6th of February 2020, so this year, which looked at the attainment gap between disadvantaged pupils and their peers, and this is what they found, which again, very alarming. So 456 out of 143,000 pupils classed as disadvantaged by the Department of Education achieved the top grade 9s in English and maths, compared to 6,132 just general students. So that is, I can't even work out the percentage in my head. I don't do maths. But 456 out of 143,000 reached the top grade.
From disadvantaged backgrounds.
From disadvantaged backgrounds. And what's again interesting is that 1 in 4 students are classed as disadvantaged as well. So that's a quarter of the whole education system, and students are defined as being eligible as for free school meals. So when we're looking at disadvantaged students, it's students who may come from maybe a low socio-economic background, who may be eligible for free school meals, people premium, single parent home, first generation, all of those kind of criterias. And when you're looking at this, some of the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Boys, essentially, and those from mixed white and Caribbean black boys have the weakest results, and of females, white British. And then lastly, Duncan Baldwin, so the director of the ASCL, says that some groups of disadvantaged pupils make less progress than others because of challenges in their lives, and this can penalize schools with more disadvantaged pupils. So before we go on to the main issue about what this algorithm was, we're just setting a precedence here for everyone. So what is education disadvantage? It is low income on a strong predictor of low educational performances. So students from low income backgrounds show a strong predictor of low educational performances. Again, educational disadvantage is also where white children in poverty have on average lower educational achievement and are more likely to continue to underachieve. It also shows that boys are more likely to have lower results than girls, especially those who are Bangladeshi, Pakistani, or Black African. One thing that's really interesting to note is that when you look at education attainment results, actually white working class boys are amongst the lowest in that attainment band. Children from different backgrounds have contrasting experience at school. So this is not talking about the lived experiences in schools. So less advantaged children are more likely to feel a lack of control over their learning and to become reluctant recipients of the taught curriculum. So again, there are a lot of conversations going on about decolonizing the curriculum and making it more reflective and representative of the students in the institution. And research has shown that this influences the development of different attitudes to education, which is what Danielle said at the beginning. And out-of-school activities can help build self-confidence. So research has shown that things such as having an extra tutor, extracurricular activities can begin to help students to improve their attainment scores. But again, the issue here is that when you're looking at disadvantaged families, that option is only relevant or appropriate or available to the more privileged families. And lastly, all of these factors are at the heart of the social divide in educational outcomes. So again, what we're seeing is that actually what is taking place in the education sector, in the disparity in attainment and outcomes, is actually being transferred and translated into society in itself. So we're looking at the wealth divide, we're looking at racial divide, we're looking at social equality and equity, we're looking at economic divide. So these were just some facts and figures and a brief discussion to begin to paint a picture of what is the landscape of the UK in terms of attainment. So just putting it out there to you guys now, we know what's kind of gone on. You guys are teachers, so I want to get, hear from you guys what has taken place in the last week.
A-level results.
What happened?
So as you know, at the beginning, so in March, schools were closed, and then they made the decision that they were going to cancel all exams. So this is GCSE exams and A-level exams. And so I guess behind the scenes, what they were now trying to figure out is how they were going to award grades in order for these students to move on to the next phase of education. GCSE students moving into colleges and sixth forms, and A-level students going on to university, apprenticeships, whatever it was that they had decided they were going to do. Now, as teachers, we were now told that in order for them to get these grades, they were going to have, it was their predicted grades that were going to be used. Mm-hmm. These grades were going to be given, and then the exam centres were then going to moderate these grades, and that would be essentially what the students get. So us as teachers, I guess there was a ongoing debate, and I think this is what brought on it highlighted the discussion about unconscious bias and biases within education, because we were already very aware that, or many people were very aware that those disadvantaged students already, if you were given predicted grades, their attainment before this, their predictions were going to be very low, regardless of whether they were going to, we were, as Johnoi had said, holistically, we knew that the child, they had the right mindset, and if they had sat that exam, they would have smashed it out of the park. They would have done a really, really great job. We couldn't necessarily take that into consideration because we were told that we needed to be objective. We were told that we needed to be fair. So that means using a whole bunch of attainment data that was from previous years. So we're talking SATs, CATS tests, assessments they did in year 7, 8, 9. And I did GCSE because I didn't have any A-level students this year. So I did GCSE students. So I had to use all of that previous attainment data to come up with a robust, solid grade for them in the summer. Mm-hmm. And that took time. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, oh yeah, it was easy. I had to come up with my own formulas and my own spreadsheet to ensure that it was the most objective.
But this wasn't government assisted at all.
This was not government. The government just said, use your predicted grade. They gave the most broad guidelines in order to do this. Yeah. And they said, it's going to be down to the teacher's discretion. That's what it was. Yeah. And I was very aware, even myself, and I had to be very honest with myself. I was very aware that I too have some unconscious biases. So I had to be very mindful of literally just being very, very objective. I had to throw all of that out of the window and say the best way for me to give you the grade that, whether it's a grade that not necessarily that you deserve, but to give you the best grade, I had to be very objective. And I was very mindful of that. So I've gone through all these formulas, I've given the grades, and I said, you know what? Cool. This is what it is. That now gets sent on to SLT. SLT send it on to the centres. It gets moderated. A week before the results come out, I'm pretty sure it was a week. I don't even think it was a week.
Yeah.
Less than a week. A week before, big headline. We're going to use, essentially what they said is we're going to use an algorithm. We don't trust teachers. That's essentially what the headline was. We don't trust teachers' predicted grades. We're going to use our own algorithm. And I just thought, okay, what just happened? I felt blindsided. I thought I've done all this work to ensure that my students get the grade that they should be getting. And then you've basically just looked at me and said, actually, no, we don't actually trust what it is that we're doing. We're just going to do it ourselves. And part of doing those grades, we had to rank them. Yeah. So if, say you have a class of 10 students, 5 of them get an A, 3 of them get a B, and the other 2 get a C. Out of those students, so the 5 that got an A, you had to say which student had the highest A, which student had the lowest A, and rank it like that, and then do the same with the Bs, the Cs, and all the rest of it. Now, my class was small. and they all had different grades, but I still had to rank it. Their rank number would still be 1 for that student, 1 for the other, because it was the only grades that they got. Now, with this algorithm, and we're going to go into it a bit more, essentially it's like they use that ranking to determine what these grades were now going to happen. And now what they said is that they were using previous attainment data, but what now happens is that schools, that not only were they using the data of the students, but they were also using the data of the schools. Now, you can have a student that can reach an A star in a school that has been historically requires improvement or inadequate. Already, because the school requires improvement, that child's grade is already low. It doesn't matter whether that child got an A star, whether they got the 9, whether they got the A star, irrelevant, because their grade is already going to be low because of where the school is and how the school has performed previously. Now, a school that has no data, so we're talking, and we have to look at it that it's not just, we're not talking just state schools and independent schools and school buildings, PRUs, alternative education centres, they still give GCSEs. If they have no prior attainment, it's 0. They're already at the bottom. Because there's no prior attainment. So plug into this magic algorithm that you came up with, and then that's their grade. So a student who still got an A star at A-level, so say you had one who went to a grammar school in an affluent area, let's just say Kensington, Royal Borough of Kensington, Kensington and Chelsea, let's just say that. That student gets an A star there. Then you've got Southwark. That student gets an A star there. Already, before anything has happened, before you even go into which people did better at mocks, which people did better at all of that, already the student from Southwark is at the bottom because their school is inadequate or requires improvement. And in my head, it was mind-blowing that you thought that this would be the best way to do it, that you thought that this was fair, that you thought that this was just and the best way to do it. I just thought, what were you looking at? Like, genuinely, what were you actually thinking? This is not making any sense. You have already, those at the top are at the top. Those at the bottom remain at the bottom. And you saw it in the stats. Independent schools, 4% increase in their predicted grades, whereas the 96% of everybody else were 2 or 3 grades lower. I said, and that still didn't cause you. I have so much to say on this because I just feel like what are they called? The people that do statistics, the statisticians. You people, you mathematicians, you people. Do you not test the algorithm? Do you not test the validity of it and because common research methods for my master's dissertation, do I not have to test validity and reliability? Did you not test it? You just said, no. Cool, this works.
So
Numbers look all right.
I want to get some of your thoughts. So as a teacher, you both kind of you teach across for different kind of grade bands, so from year 7 plus. What were your experiences of this?
I think for me, as Mama said, it's horrendous. I mean, for me, I'm only just entering into the profession, but I have like colleagues as well that were in group chats, so I'm aware of all of their students, and just getting notifications of how horrified they are that, certain students that literally were guaranteed an A star literally have now been given a D. They no longer can go to their first choice or their insurance. They get declined. And then when the government decide to retract by it, the university still can't take them in, or maybe some can. So it really does show the heart of the government. It really does show the true intention. The fact that Eton, no one at all whatsoever downgraded, 100% of them, none of them downgraded. It really does say a lot, and it really does say that what was their reasoning behind this. When there was an interview with Gavin Williamson, his complete answer every single time was the fact that teacher biasness, teachers might give all A stars, and it's like, okay, you call us experts when it best suits you, but then when it's time for us to actually display our work and what we're actually trained for, it's then some of you may give A stars. And the thing about what Mamus even said about the fact that you were checked by head of departments and then head of departments and then checked by senior leadership. So it shows that there's still a checks and balances. It's not, oh my gosh, I'm going to give my lovely student an A. My head of department will still be like, no, actually. And then even SLT. So there's still some type of checks and balances. So it just shows that they really did not think about this. I think they're not unaware. They knew that this was a struggle. They knew that the disadvantaged schools are going to be worse off. They just didn't care. And because of the pressure groups, because of the rallying and whatnot, they decided to switch. But it still cut everyone short, because
100%.
is everyone that was meant to go to their first choice actually going to get in? Because it's late now, you know? So yeah, it's appalling, and it's sad that there's a lot of statistics that you've mentioned, but when it becomes to real people, it's a different situation. When you actually see the interviews of these young people crying, the fact that one girl says she's never got a D in her entire education, and she says she got like majority Ds. How does that make sense? Like, it does not make sense at all. And it's really appalling. It shows a lot about the government, and it really does question the education secretary and the entire process of the education system, to be honest with you. But yeah.
I would say, obviously, when we were first given the instructions to do so, the mentality I had towards it was like, let's make lemonade out of lemons, basically. So I know my class. Okay, I'd rather be the one to kind of, predict them and so on and so forth. And just like Mamus, and I actually told my year 11 class, and I said, guys, I have been watching you from the start of the year. Like, I have my data tracker, which I regularly show them. So that could be attitude to homework, effort, mocks, everything combined with it. So it's not like I was almost preparing myself for something like this to take place, which I never knew would happen. And I remember one year 11 kid was saying to me, like, sir, I was like, hey man, you're right. And he was like, yeah, like, are you gonna bust me? You're gonna nice me? And I was like, no, I'm not, but I'm gonna give you what you deserve, purely because like, this is literally all that you demonstrated to me. I say that to say this, that at the start of this whole system, the government made it seem as if the teachers were taking lead on this, like that we were, a lot of the onus was on us. And I think at that point, there was a sense of pride that kind of took over myself, in the sense, okay, we all had to kind of just rally together. Let's help this next generation. When this algorithm kind of went belly up and so on and so forth, it made it seem as if like we were in on it. And that we knew everything was taking place. And then I'd even go further. It actually caused, I would say, unless it changed, I would not have gone into results day tomorrow, because I didn't want it to seem as if like, I colluded, to kind of flop their future. I was ashamed to go in, and I think what they don't understand is that beyond the academics, beyond the teaching and so on and so forth, actual teachers hold such an important role in a student's life. And if you're already kind of putting things in place to break that relationship, like, you don't understand the implications that you're doing for the future. So I was saying to one of my friends that I fully believe that a lot of these young people are going through a lot of traumatic experiences. And before they even like plug into the next stages of life, I would not even be surprised if some of them sign up and say, I want therapy, because like it's real, On the news, one person said that they were downgraded to a U, right? You only get a U if you flop, you don't even turn up to the exam, you get a U. She's like, so how can I be disqualified already when there was no exam?
100%.
And I was like, wow. So it brings back to what you're saying, Dan, in the sense of, it's all great, these statistics, it's all great, these reports, that's done day after day and so forth, but I don't think the government actually like dive in on schools per se and know what's on the ground. Like know, for example, that Johnny and so on and so forth, his life decisions and so on and so forth, how he has to struggle and, to make these results and so on and so forth. And I think it's this disillusion. And I think that's the key thing that's kind of been raised in this whole time, in the sense of like, we are led by a government that is so disillusioned from the working class. And how long does this need to kind of go on for? And I think that's where I am. I think
I'm going to move the conversation away from the statistics. I think what we've kind of really highlighted is actually the need to understand. I think the title of this is, does the algorithm know me? And I think the need for the conversation now is to really begin to explore and bring to light the actual experiences of these young people. I think, I was looking at this throughout the week, I haven't really commented much. I've just been really observing, and I think this is such a poor method of social stratification. And what we're really seeing, as you've kind of already began to introduce, is this huge disparity between, as you said, the working class and what would be considered the elite. And I think what is so painful for me to begin to recognize and with the students is, if you look at, again, some of what reports have said, and even a lot of the students who this has affected, just going on a brief Twitter search, it's people are racially black or BAME students. I think it's so damaging that students who potentially, and if I'm going to step into the shoes of I'm a black student anyway, probably speaking a second language. You've got many of the students here English as an additional language. You've got people who are coming from different kind of cultural contexts in their homes. You've got students who are potentially on free school meals. You've got students who potentially don't have the access to certain maybe opportunities. You've got students who, I saw a student tweet that she had literally been in the library from 7 a.m. every day, revising and preparing for her medical exam. She paid her way through all of the qualifications whilst working 2 part-time jobs. And now at the end of the day, she was not able to go into a placement which she got because of the grades. And I think it's so painful to begin to see that actually what you said, the disillusionment of a government, is actually what it's going to create is a disenfranchised generation.
100%.
Because now I think, as I said, it was so lucky that they reneged on their decision, because I work in university, and when you actually go to first year, second year and looking at for placements or internships, it's based off your A-level grades.
Wow.
So now again, if this decision was not reneged and these students went to university somehow, those who managed to get in, got in, and they're now looking for work experience to get further employment and get ahead in their career, they're competing against now these wealthy middle-class students who, if got their grades, got higher. Like, my goodness, I saw another tweet where this student who from working class was all A's predicted got all D's and E's. A student from the elite class predicted all D's, got all A stars. So they're now competing for placements against students who have all of these top grades from the wealthy class, but now these students from the working class whose grades got reduced aren't able to go on to placements or internships. So now what does that begin to cause? It's now causing an effect going out to the employment sector. Who is now controlling economy?
100%.
It's the wealthy. And I think this is why it's so dangerous, because if we're looking at what they actually did off-cal, I grew up in Barking and Dagenham. My school, when I first started, was a mockery. Like, we had green blazers. Then when we started, every year had a different colour shirt. So, so year 7s had a sky blue shirt. Year 8s had a dark blue shirt. Year 9s had a red burgundy shirt. Year 10s had I think one was white, and I forgot the other colour. Every year had a different colour. So we were just whatever. Yeah, it was a circus. But when we actually got into year 7, there was a league table for the borough. My school was bottom of that league table. By the time my year reached year 11 after GCSEs, we were 3rd in the borough. Wow. So exactly, it was amazing. Like, my year did bits. But if they use this result, if they use this kind of criteria for us back then, a lot of us got A's, A stars. If they used the previous years where we were bottom of the league table, I can't potentially imagine what grade I would have got and what my life would have turned out to be.
You'd have been ungraded, mate.
Yeah, literally.
And this is why it's so baffling for me, because if we're looking at a intersectionality now, there's a lot of conversation about youth, about knife crime, drugs. There's so much research going into county lines. How does this make sense? Because research has shown that the lack of access to education opportunities begins to present the opportunity for students to begin to engage in extracurricular activities per se. How does it make sense to use this criteria to now rob students of a future and then be hypocritical to now tomorrow begin to make news headlines about youth and their
make it make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Question. Why, of course, you guys are in the schools, so you guys can bring some kind of personal testimonies. Why did some schools feel that they've been treated unfairly? And why did this benefit private schools more? I've got just a recent stat here which showed that the percentage increase in grades A and above compared with 2019. And for independent schools, the increase was 4.5. 4.5. For other schools was 3.6. It's looking like for secondary comprehensive, it was 2% increase. Academies 1.8. Selective secondary schools just over 1%. So what vaccine was showing that actually independent schools had a 4% plus increase in the A-level grades from last year. So again, what we are seeing here is that the beneficiaries of this were the elite. As teachers, as educators, what should your response be? What should our responses be? What should the students' responses be? We've seen riots, not riots, we've seen protests. But what should our responses be in this moment? How do we move forward from this?
Well, I think personally, I love what the A-level kids are doing. This is, the subject that myself and Danielle teaches, citizenship, is all about proactiveness in our community. And it's actually all about being, active citizenship. And I think further, it actually shows that we need students to be educated about things that is affecting them. So the fact that, they've made placards and so on and so forth and actually forced the government, it didn't come by growing ups or anything like that. It actually came by the next generations. I think one person said that they were so let down by the government that they would have voted for in 2019, right? And it's like, and I said that, well, you're going for the Conservatives or so on and so forth. And the fact that they're now able to kind of ideologically decipher between different political parties and so on and so forth. This is really good. And I think it shows that you are doing the next generation a huge disservice, and I don't even think it's right anymore to treat them as kids, because if anything, they're young adults now. They're now going to take on the baton for the next. And so what they're doing is excellent. This is what we want. This is what we teach them to do, So I think as teachers and those in the profession, we actually need to be supporting them. Let's just say that they had their own strikes, basically, and we should have been there with them.
I think I agree, and I think one thing that Johnoi had said is that we need to stop discrediting young people and treating them like young people, if that makes sense. These are now young adults. These are now the future of the next generation, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It did not take any goading from any adults or anything. They had seen with their own eyes what was taking place in society, and they said, I'm going to do something about it, and that was in the form of protests. In the form of protests. Now, they were non-violent. They just had the placards because what they were speaking was truth. It wasn't something that you can now cover their eyes from or shield them from. They had seen it and had experienced it for themselves, and they thought, this is whack. They genuinely were just like, this doesn't make sense. I have been penalised because of my postcode. Essentially, they have been penalised because of their postcode.
Someone said it postcode was.
It was nuts. You genuinely did a whole postcode lottery with their futures. I was like, what were you playing at? And they had realised this. And so I think for us as teachers,
have they realised it?
I think the students had realised this. The students were aware that, oh my gosh, it doesn't. The attitude might have been, it doesn't matter how hard I work, I'm still going to be at the bottom. And you've just made that you've actually made that very, very clear to me. So as much as the government will tell me, oh no, you need to work hard, and it's sort of, meritocracy. Yeah. So it's, merit-based in that sense. You've actually shown me that actually, no, it's not. You have something to do with this, and you're going to have to change it. They realize that it's you guys. This is no longer on me. This is no longer based on what I do and what I don't do. You have decided my future, and so you're going to have to do something about that. And I think as teachers, like Johnoi said, we need to support that. But also as teachers, I think what it is that we need to, how can I put this? We actually need to rally together and sort of say to, amongst in the profession and amongst ourselves, we need to sort of say, no, we're going to help you along the way. We're going to support you along the way. We're going to bring you up with us. So as you're fighting, we're also fighting too. Because I think this year, education, there's that meme of, the black boy with the dreads and the red jumper, and he's like, floundering in the wind. That's what education has been like in 2020. We've just been hit with so many different things, and I think now is the time where we really need to rally together and bring them along with us. So as we fight, as you fight, we're gonna fight with you, and we're gonna support you in that. And then also just our attitudes in terms of in teaching and what we do in the classroom. We need to be very, very aware that, you know what, they're doing us wrong. Like just to put it out there, you know, as raw as possible, they're doing us dirty, and we're just gonna have to do better. We cannot. It sounds like a really, really hard thing to say, and but we cannot trust the people that are actually in charge, and we're gonna have to just really do this on we're gonna have to do this on our own. We've been doing it on our own. The guidelines that we've had, it's like so we're gonna have to really rally together and start doing something, like actually start doing something about it. We cannot rely on what the government guidelines are, what they're asking us to do. We're really gonna have to think about this ourselves, based on what's out there and the information that we now have. So
I think just as Johnoi and Mamus has said, like, active citizenship is key, and this is what it's about. And it does really just makes me happy that, you know, our young people are educated on how to actually counteract these things. But what it does show to me is that as teachers, as educators, we need to be getting into those fields of power. That's literally because for me, I'm just continuously thinking, okay, cool, so am I going to apply to be the next education secretary or what? Because for me, I'm just like, as educators, we can't just be at the bottom here, like just getting hit, as you said, with the young boy. Like, okay, so how are we going to be solution focused? How can we be of influence? How can we, you know, impact? And, you know, our young people have done that on this kind of scale. But then even just getting more, you know, people with this right mind getting into the government, or more of these people with this right mind getting into, you know, being heads of pressure groups or whatever it can be. My own thing is, you know, other than empowering our young people to also take action, making them aware that they are being cheated by the system, but even us, how can we make influence? Are we lobbying? Are we going to email AMP? All of us do it together. I think for me, it's just about everyone really tackling into those positions of influence and those positions of power, to really question the government, and that's what's being done. And that, I'm grateful for that.
I think it's really great because one thing I was asking myself is, as kind of people in the classroom, how are you going, and this might be a question if anyone wants to answer, how are you going, before I start, where students have now seen the landscape and the character of a society that we are living in, how do you prepare maybe, you know, different identities of students to actually go out into this world and actually do something for themselves? Because again, as you said, there's some who may be very discouraged. I saw a report which said that in the last week, the number of calls to a suicide hotline for students between the ages of 16 and 18 had doubled. So we're looking at the mental health effects of this on students. How as teachers again, we have a lot of listeners who are teachers, how should they now begin to protect, but also prepare the students to leave the school and to actually do something with their education?
Yeah, I love what you just said there, because I think a lot of young people, especially the next year coming up, there can be some type of apathy where they're like, but miss, what's the point? Like, there might be a second strike and then your grades won't even matter. Like, what you're giving me won't even matter. So I think there's a lot of responsibility for us as educators. I think there is important for information, but then there's an importance for empowerment. I think sometimes when you give a child too much information, they can just become demoralized. You have to give them empowerment and also the information in order to overcome. So I think it's not just educating them about the terrible things that's going on and educating them about these awful things and about the effects of mental health and whatnot, but it's also, we're going to have to really think strategically as teachers about what tips and what things are we going to do in order to help them to overcome it. Like, what equipping are we giving them so that they can actually be okay, and it's not just they're leaving my classroom more traumatized. Like Miss said, like the world is ending. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's information as well as empowering, and information to overcome as well as information that they're actually well informed.
I really love that. I mean, I was just getting goosebumps right now because I'm just like, it's so true. I think it's like, you know, the cat's out the bag now. You know, there's disadvantage. I think everyone knows that now. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with one of my friends' younger brother who's going into year 7, and he was talking to me about Gavin Williamson, and you know, he even said, "Oh, why did the parent call him Gavin?" You know, and so on and so. And it's just like, it's so awesome to kind of see a year 6 going into year 7 talking about politics. You know, so everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, to follow on from what Danielle said, this whole empowerment thing is like, if anything that we've learned as educators, that listen, teaching needs to go beyond the curriculum. Right now, we need to be teaching them, right, to actually live a life outside of the classroom as well. Like, because it's like, no, I mean, so if there's a level of baby feeding that was there, it now needs to kind of even dumb down a bit more, because literally these kids need to be prepared for life outside. And the harsh reality is that it is disadvantageous. You know, like that's life. But ultimately, right, you are not going to be the anomaly that succumb to that disadvantage. 100%. You can literally like break out of it. I think some of us have our own stories and so on and so forth, you know, from single parent household, and like the stats prove that we shouldn't be where we are right now.
100%.
But yet still, right, you know, that has amounted to the fact that of our faith in God and so on and so forth. But there's a level of drive and determination that we said, no, I want better. I want more. And I think this is what the kids now need to have.
Agree. Only thing, you know, to add to that is just that this language of it sounds like this language of excellence. Your stats may have told you one thing, but you are very capable of shifting that and changing that. And I think we have to now, as teachers, as educators, that's what we now have to be teaching them, along with, you know, the subjects and the citizenship and the PE and the maths and the science. We give them that powerful knowledge, yes, but we also then empower them to be able to apply that in wherever it is, but apply that thinking of excellence. I'm better than what my society has told me that I am. I'm better than what the government has told me that I am. And I think that's what we need to be doing as teachers and as educators. And that will look different for every different teacher. Every teacher teaches differently. So that will look different in different schools. And also, you know, just one thing that I know with curriculum is about what we're teaching them in terms of knowledge, but policies need to change. That's one thing that I, you know, just looking at it, you know, doing my master's, I had a module on it, and I just thought, it's the policy that needs to change, because the policy affects what we teach. Curriculum is about what we teach them, but policy is how we are teaching them, and it's the policies that need to change, because unfortunately, we can change, you know, we can have the representation, we can have, you know, the different topics within the subject and, you know, all of that subject knowledge. But if we don't change how we're doing it, we will fall into the same thing. It will just be, you know, we'll be all right for a few years, and then lo and behold, something like this will happen again, and then we don't know what to do because we're just using the same policy. It's policies that have to change. I'm such an advocate for it in terms of schooling, that it's not just the curriculum. It's great that we can have all these different things come into it, but how we do it is what's going to completely shift the education system as a whole. So for me, and, you know, as a teacher, as an educator, I'm very much aware that we just need to change how we're doing things, how we're teaching our children. It's not just what we're teaching them, but how. Yeah.
I want to end with something. I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and I'm going to just say this to the kind of educators. I think with what has been said so far, I think there's definitely a challenge there to each and every one of you to look at where you are, whether in your teaching, head of department, whatever type of role you are in, and just begin to consider what more can I do? What can I do kind of going forward in my profession, whether it's, you know, being a bit more integral, being a bit more intentional, whether it's looking at, actually, I can attain probably this new role as a head teacher. I think the time is kind of really showing that actually we all have a level of power and, you know, to affect change. And I think what would really be a level of injustice is continuing business as usual. I think students have shown, I'm going to kind of leave my quiet at the end, but I think what we've seen in the last week is that we can change the system. And I think that is a powerful statement in itself. So what I kind of want you guys to do as we begin to round up is just putting you guys on the spot. Danielle expects a lot of motivational speaker, etc. But I want to do two things. I want to just kind of go around and get you guys to give a message to the government and then a message to the students. And then we're going to end on that. So I'm going to start with Mamus. I thought Johnoi was looking at me intently.
You got the signal.
Did you not catch my own eyes as well? Why is it Jonoi's eyes that you only caught? Right, a message to the government. Okay, no, I'm going to do a message to the students first because...
You can do either or both.
Okay, a message to students. And I think I had my Twitter rant because this whole A-level debacle, I was livid. And I think just a message to the students is that you have shown a level of strength and a level of resilience that people did not think were possible from young people in this pandemic during, just doing school in this time. And I think a message that I would say to them is that do not forget that. There is a level of strength and resilience that you have despite what the government has done, despite what has happened. You will get to where it is that you want to get to, not because of them, but because of you. Because you have it in you to do so. And you have to remember that you have gone through so much, and this is A-levels and GCSE students. You have gone through so much in the space of 3 months or 3-4 months, like half of a year. You have to understand that you have come so far. And there is things that you have done. There is a mindset that you have picked up. You may not even be aware of it. That will enable you, let me not say will enable you to reach your goals. There is a level of strength and resilience that you have that, we as adults, let's just put it that way, did not think was possible. And you've proven us wrong. So continue to do that for the rest of your life because you will get far and you will get to where you need to get to. To the government, it's a very simple sentence. Start being relatable. If you are going to have an education of secretary, let it be that the education of secretary actually knows what's happening in education, both past, present, and possibly future. Done. Drop mic.
Well, yeah, okay, cool. I definitely have a message to the government first. So let me put my serious tone on. Dear government, you have left, in simplicity, you have left a distaste in the mouths of the next generation. And this isn't necessarily going to be washed. I'm probably looking at the mic and I'm talking to them. This isn't necessarily going to be washed out by false promises. Nobody's going to fall for that anymore. If anything, it needs to be challenged by you being integral in your actions. So I literally implore you to be integral from here on out. Don't say what you're going to do, just do it, okay? And message to the students, I think the level of strength that you've shown supersedes your current situation. And if anything, what you should learn from this is the fact that society may not necessarily be ready for you per se, but ultimately you need to be your biggest cheerleader to actually impact the society, because sometimes the door will not be open, right? You walk into the door, and that's just how life is.
Okay.
I mean,
wow. Okay. No. Okay. To the government, I would just say, as a democracy that you call yourself, you are for the people and by the people. Yet the truth of the matter is, you have been for your own people and not for the other. And what I want to just really put to the government is that you have done an injustice to the entire 2020 class of A-levels, but also you've done an injustice to the younger ones coming up, because you are just diminishing their faith in you. You're diminishing their idea of even wanting to go into politics. You're discouraging many young people from all walks of life, from upper class right through down to the working class. So I want to question the government, to put the government, to hold them to account that you need to be more relatable. The education secretary, all of them, none of them have been teachers, none of them have been head teachers. I think it's appalling that education secretary, which is in charge of education within the UK, have not even worked in education. It's absolutely ridiculous. And there needs to be a prerequisite where literally you have to be a teacher or you have to have worked within education with young people, having some type of management of staff in order to be within that role. To the young people, I want to just encourage you that in life there are many barriers, and unfortunately they look different in different circumstances, but I believe that you have the power within you in order to overcome that. And you know, you've seen people gone ahead from all walks of life with all different circumstances, and through faith, through working hard, through opportunities, they've been able to rise above that. And I want to just encourage you that just as you've taken that step of questioning the government or protesting, or even just that, even trying to find out more about what's going on and what they can do, I want to implore you that that's fantastic. And also to take that passion and that drive for whatever you want to do. I want to encourage you that you're not defined by your grades. And so focus on your passion, focus on what it is that you truly want to do, and put your all into that. And honestly, you will be a great testament to the younger people coming up. You'll be able to go around and actually tell them that, listen, this happened in 2020 when I was an A-level student. You probably would have thought I would have ended up becoming, I don't even know, but ended up becoming nothing of what I am today. And so I want to encourage you to keep having that mentality of keep looking forward to where you're trying to go, and just don't forget the people behind, and to continue to use that as part of your story.
I'm just going to end by saying we're proud of you. The positive, we are proud of what you have done. And we want to thank you, all of our listeners, for tuning in today for this special podcast. We want to thank you, Danielle, for bringing your knowledge, bringing your expertise, and your encouragement to our students and educators. And we hope this has been beneficial, and we encourage you guys to do not let this die out. Keep protesting, keep engaging in the discussion, keep supporting and keep being amazing educators that you are. The generation needs you, and we need you.